Could the British Labour Party apologise for helping to create Israel on occupied Palestinian territory? UK Labour Member of Parliament Rupa Asha Huq thinks so. At a Palestinian Solidarity Campaign meeting, Huq said, 1948, that happened under a British government. To my mind, an apology? Yes, you could do one. A Labour government could probably get that through. Huq was attacked for defending fellow Labour MP Naz Shah, who had to apologise for backing Israel's relocation to America.
In 1948, the Israel regime was founded on forcibly occupied Palestinian land. 19 years later, Israel occupied the Palestinian West Bank, later annexing the Gaza Strip, Al-Quds and Arab territories in a move never recognised by the international community. Labour has suspended dozens of members over allegations of anti-Semitism and racism. Their leader, Jeremy Corbyn, ordered an inquiry and a new party code banning all racism.
How should Zionist lobbies be challenged? Has suppressing criticism of Israel harmed free speech? And does the British Labour Party owe Muslim Semites an apology? These are the simple questions we sought to answer. When Labour helped create Israel, it forced the expulsion of hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Muslim Semites from their land, displacing millions across 5 decades. How should Labour apologise to today's Muslim Semites? Here's the public's view.
It did happen during the time of Labour, yeah? Well, I think lots of things that were done by the West created later problems, and we have seen the results now, and we are still seeing it. And I think those that were done for creating these problems, yes, I think they should apologize. Why not?
Of course, I mean, for me, that's like basic morals, kind of, in a way, is that, you know, we can't, obviously, in the present day, can't fix what we did in the past, but there's a way to rectify it. And I think an apology and kind of working from what we've learned from that mistake and just kind of doing it that way. But apologising is for me, is a surefire way to get around, you know, the issue, or, you know, just apologise. It's morals, so.
Well, I suppose if they were in power at the time, then probably there's a degree of responsibility that they should uphold, yeah. So I think they probably should apologise if they were in power at the time, yeah.
Given the time of the circumstance, you know, they did what they had to do, because you can't make everybody happy, regardless of what side you are on. But yeah, I think now looking at the situation, not necessarily apologize, but recognize that there was a problem and indicate that such an issue could have maybe been avoided, or like relook at how things are done.
I'm sure, yes. There would be a case for anybody being displaced. That apology is a tricky one, because that opens up a Pandora's box for the Israelis. So maybe some recognition that some recognition that what's the word? Injustice was done to certain people.
Our experts gave their view of the type of apology Labour should offer today's Muslim Semites.
The destruction of the Palestinian civilization was taking place under the Labour watch. There is no doubt of it. This may as well suggest that already in the 1940s, Labour wasn't a friend to the oppressed. It always may as well suggest to us that Jewish domination within Labour, within the Labour Party, within the left, isn't exactly a new thing.
The Labour Party has a historic responsibility to Palestine and to Palestinians, as it was the party in power when 700,000 Palestinians were banished from their land and Palestine was ethnically cleansed by Zionists. Currently, there are around 13 million Palestinians worldwide, making them the largest refugee population in the world. Now that the Labour Party finally has a pro-Palestine leader, it should advocate for the right to return of these 13 million Palestinians.
Israel has violated more United Nations resolutions than any other entity in world history. In the public's opinion, how should Labour take responsibility for Israel's failure to respect the United Nations?
That's an interesting question as well. I guess because it's something that happened a while ago, perhaps those leaders in power that did help the formation and the things that resulted, then need to take responsibility for the part that was due to them. So I think that's probably a fair point. How far that goes and what can be done now, I don't really know. I really don't know too much about it back then, but I guess in anything, if someone's created or helped facilitate something at any point in time in history, then there's a responsibility that lies with those that did help and facilitate that particular formation at the time,
I think you just sow what you reap, and I think they should take responsibility for that.
Government should be held accountable, but I guess that's the best answer. Government should probably be held accountable for situations they create on their own.
Well, they were defending themselves against the Palestinians and Egyptians and Syrians, so they did have to defend themselves.
Well, inevitably we were, of course, involved in the setting up of Palestine. As with so many issues in, these times of establishing territory, the intentions were good, didn't always come out so well in practice. I think we underestimated the tenacity of Israel. It's a very sad situation. I have no offers of a great solution. I tend emotionally to support the Palestinians. I think all people do support underdogs. The Israelis say, look, we're getting these bombs over, we've got to do something. It's rather like a very big dog being just snapped at by a tiny puppy and saying, look at what I'm receiving here.
Our experts outlined their view of the duty on Labour to accept responsibility for Israel's serial failure to respect UN resolutions.
Sadly enough, we have learned recently that the Labour Party has very, very little integrity in its system. The party doesn't even respect elementary freedom of speech. The party suspended Ken Livingstone just 2-3 weeks ago for actually telling the truth about Zionism and collaboration with Hitler and so on and so on. I don't hold my breath. I don't believe in Jeremy Corbyn's ability to stand for ethical principles, human rights issues. I think that it is very embarrassing, it is very sad, but this is what is left out of our left.
Successive British governments, both Conservative and Labour, have been partially responsible for Israel's crimes against Palestinians, including the illegal colonial occupation, apartheid system and lethal military offences. The British government has been complicit in all of these war crimes because as an integral part of the international community, it has failed to sanction Israel on any occasions in its continuous failure to adhere to international law.
Since 2009, Israel has killed thousands of innocent Palestinian Muslim Semites. How would you have campaigned against Labour's decision to create Israel the way it did in or before 1948? That's what we asked the public.
Well, I personally think Labour has to apologise for lots of things. And I think, under Tony Blair, Labour didn't react as a Labour government. It was almost like something fake, you know? And they did all sorts of things that were wrong.
I'm not sure exactly what happened in 1948, but in terms of how things could possibly be resolved, I feel like it's a lot of not personal, but like nationalistic ego that really comes into play. If they can somehow get over that and try to create a sort of safe haven, safe like zone to try to get the leaders together to agree on something, that like influential leaders, not just ones that were put in power by the Western influence, but influential leaders that the people actually respect, then perhaps like a change can be made. I don't know.
Maybe a two-state agreement from the beginning on would have eased things. I don't know. It's difficult to look in the future. But yeah, to run things along, to try those separate parts, which are, you know, it's the two parts of Palestine, and altogether with the whole situation down there with artificial borders where there have never been borders. They should have looked more how to divide it. Where are traditional, cultural or borders for the people there, not on in London at the map. Okay, we get this, France get that. I think that would have been an improvement.
I would have done, it's morally wrong for me personally, so I would have been against the whole thing. But I guess there's nothing much that someone like me could do, or someone like, you know, the everyday human being could do, because at the end of the day, even if I had a say in it, it's always going to be higher powers, but I'd be totally against it, naturally. It's just immoral.
What would have been the right campaign in response to Labour's role in creating Israel in the way that it did in 1948? Our experts considered the options.
We have to be very clear here. The Labour Party didn't create Israel. It was the Jews who created Israel, in fact, Zionist Jews. And we have to understand that at the time, in 1948, British military elite were fully familiar with the genocidal zeal of Jewish paramilitary organizations in Palestine, like the Irgun and the Stern Gang. They suffered a lot of casualties. All they wanted, I believe, was to bring the boys home, which they did.
Israel has killed thousands upon thousands of Palestinians since 1948. For Palestinians to get true justice, 3 key areas need to be addressed. Firstly, the illegal occupation of Gaza and the West Bank need to immediately stop, and the brutal siege of Gaza needs to end. Secondly, all 13 million Palestinians should be allowed to return home, and all those living within historic Palestine should have equal rights and equal protection under the law. Simply put, one person, one vote. Thirdly, all perpetrators of Israeli war crimes should be brought to justice.
British Labour Member of Parliament Rupa Huq suggested Britain should apologise for helping to create Israel the way it did. Do the public think Zionist lobbies in Britain can be successfully challenged in the interests of free speech?
I think free speech is a thing that should exist, and sometimes in some environments where the illusion of you can speak freely, but then we know sometimes you can't. So I feel there should be maybe more leeway in all areas of life where you can give free speech without the possible threat of repercussions or censorship. Or I've just been worried to talk about the US is supposed to be founded on free speech, and I guess most of the Western world should be, but and the Eastern world, you know, people should be able to speak freely without serious detriment to their well-being.
I think if you voice your own opinion, you have to. It is given that you may, encounter criticism, but the way you deal with it that's up to you in the end. But I mean, if you have freedom of speech, then you have to take that into account in the end. So yeah.
If they breach some humanitarian laws, you know, if it somehow violates humanity, then I think it's okay to jump in and give your views or point out the mistakes of the government. Otherwise, not.
Yes, I agree with that. I think quite a lot of Jews actually make comments critical of Israel, obviously without being anti-Semitic. So I don't see why non-Jews shouldn't do that as well.
I'm getting rather perturbed that you can't say there is a suggestion that you're disrespecting people. How far are you allowed simply to disagree with their views before you are told that you can't say that? It seems to me, I know many Jews, and they're great friends of mine, but I still think I'm entitled to criticise Israel as a country for its policies, and I don't think that's being anti-Jewish. You know, it's not about, oh, I think the Jews are awful and they're mean, and you know, we're not saying that. We're being actually looking objectively at their activities. It's hopelessly biased and prejudiced against the Palestinians. They really want to, which they'd like them all to go away, and you know, you can't have that position.
Given the attacks on Rupa Huq, how do our experts feel Zionist lobbies can be confronted to defend freedom of speech?
I don't think that the Jewish and the Zionist lobbies in Britain or anywhere in the West are going to be beaten by the political establishment as we know it. I know that the political establishment is in Britain, in France, in the United States, are funded heavily by Jewish oligarchy. The media is dominated at large by some Jewish lobbies. There is a lot of academic work on it, on foreign policy in America, for instance, dominated by the Zionist lobby, and so on and so on. I believe that at a certain stage, Jewish power will be defeated because as things stand, we are all Palestinians now. We cannot talk about the world as we see it. We cannot express our thoughts freely. It is just a question of time before we see a mass protest against these powers. I also believe that the Jewish fear of anti-Semitism that is actually delusional at the moment, because there is no really anti-Semitism. There is Islamophobia. There are people who don't like gays, who protest against LGBT. There may be women who hate women, and so on, you know. But hatred towards Jews is non-existent yet.
We've seen over the past month or so just how powerful these Zionist lobby groups are here in the UK. We have seen local councils intimidated by central government for their support of BDS. We have seen, even more worryingly, the concerted efforts to conflate criticisms of the Israeli state, a consistent violator of international law, with charges of anti-Semitism, just as criticisms of Saudi Arabia are not Islamophobic, criticisms of Israel are not anti-Semitic.
The Labour Party has been targeted by Western media for criticising Israel. How has this harmed Britain's reputation as a defender of free speech? We asked the public.
I think there's a fine line between free speech, you know. It really depends. if they're talking about in terms of UK relations with Israel, then yes, I mean, they have free speech, and I don't think the criticism is valid because they are allowed to say what they want. But in terms of negotiations and things like that, that may be a more sensitive issue and can be looked up in a different way. So they should be criticized if it is more of not a discussion but a negotiation strategy.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to criticize countries or governments. I mean, mostly it's governments, and you should be able to criticize governments always. It's something we see now in other countries like Turkey, where there is a problem, and you should be always able to say that. It's more tricky with religions, but as long as it's clear, I criticize the Israeli government for what they are doing and not the people of Israel. That's fine and legit.
Well, I just wouldn't be very happy about that. I'm not very happy about that, and I think definitely, everybody should be allowed the freedom of speech and the freedom to express their opinions. Unfortunately, that just isn't the case.
Definitely. Yeah, of course. I mean, we are known as a country to have, to stick up for ourselves, and if we have an opinion, to say it, which is, part of what I love about our, culture and everything. But it's, it has hindered it, and I think you have to be so careful nowadays about what you say or which path you tread on, because anything can be manipulated. And I think it has hindered the fact that we had, this great reputation of having great free speech, and now I just think it's been cut, really. So,
to what extent have the attacks against Labour damaged the UK's reputation as a place for free speech? We asked our experts.
Freedom of speech has made it into a nostalgia in the West, and this is slightly terrifying. We all remember that at a certain stage we were free. What really happened there? Tyranny of correctness. Political correctness is defined as politics that doesn't allow political criticism. Embarrassingly enough, this is exactly the definition of an authoritarian regime or dictatorship. But political correctness is far worse than dictatorship because it is self-imposed. We imposed silence on ourselves.
The recent controversy surrounding the Labour Party and anti-Semitism has destroyed Britain's image and reputation as a democratic and free society. As it is shown that one of our major parties will ultimately give in to foreign interest lobby groups. We already knew the power that these Zionist groups had in the US, but I think many of us misunderstood and were rather naive about how potent they are here in the UK as well. Now that we fully understand how powerful they are here and how effective they've been at shutting down any debate, we must mount a collective resistance.
Britain's largest opposition party helped create the world's most repetitive violator of UN resolutions. Israel has displaced millions of Muslim Palestinian Semites, and some bold British politicians have been attacked for anti-Semitism against Jews. Yet opposing Israel is not anti-Semitic. Suppressing such opposition is anti-free speech.